give you some directive of where to go from there?
Yes, so in this particular case, when I arrived to work, I was made aware of Ms. Parcell.
I would object to hearsay if she's going to talk about a statement someone else told her.
I can rephrase, Your Honor.
Yeah. Sustain the objection.
Just generally,
Yes,
you're apprised of those sort of
yes, I am.
So, speaking to your external examination of Ms. Parcell, what jumped out at you as you were going through there to mark of significance in your report and in your findings?
So I found that there were 35 sharp force injuries to Ms. Parcell.
Okay. Did you reflect those in your diagram that you put together for purposes of recording what you found?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 192. I'm going to show you States 192.
Yes.
Is that the diagram that you put together?
Yes, this is the diagram I created.
Okay. This time the state moves into evidence. States 192.
No objection.
Objection number 192 comes part of the record.
Dr. Rose, speaking to how you received the body before you start conducting your autopsy, are there protections put in place to preserve what might potentially be collected as evidence at the time of the autopsy and maybe even down the road?
Sure. So the body is placed in a body bag and sealed, preventing from anyone getting into the bag. Also, handbags are also placed around both of the hands to preserve any evidence that may be present.
Okay. But otherwise, the body is brought to you as is from the time it's found?
Yes.
That's important to preserve for any findings that you may make or anyone afterwards. Is that
Yes.
right? And while you're conducting this autopsy, is a forensic technician with the sheriff's office with you to collect evidence for purposes of the case?
Yes, there was one forensic technician present during the autopsy of Ms. Parcell.
Okay. I want to go through with you some findings that you made on State's Exhibit 192 as it related to Ms. Parcell. I'm going to start.
This first page here.
Starting at the top. You identified Ms. Parcell on this document?
Yes.
And then you make a note there. Could you explain to the jury what the difference is between a stab wound and an incised wound?
Sure. So first I'll just say what a sharp force injury is. So a sharp force injury is an injury caused by a pointed or sharp-edged object. Examples of this include a knife, which is the most common object that we see during our work, but it also may include other objects such as scissors, a fork, screwdriver, basically anything that has a sharp or pointed edge. Then we sharp force injuries, if it's a knife, then we have either a stab wound or an incised wound. And now a stab wound is a wound that is deeper than its length on the skin, and an incised wound is a wound that is its length is longer on the skin than it is deeper. And then so here in this diagram, the shaded oval areas indicate the stab wounds, and the partially shaded areas indicate the incised wounds.
So would it be fair to say, when you say stab wound, that's what most people, when they commonplace think of the word stab, is a stab wound. And an incised wound is more of, say, a slice?
Yes.
Okay. And approximately how many sharp force wounds were located on Ms. Parcell's body as it relates to her torso and her arms?
So to her torso and her arms, there were a total of 9 sharp force injuries, and I can quickly just go through each of them. So starting with the stab wounds, Ms. Parcell had 1 stab wound to the top of her shoulder and 1 stab wound to the left side of her upper chest. Both of these wounds went through the skin and penetrated the underlying soft tissue. Then you have another stab wound to the left breast. This wound went through the skin, the underlying soft tissue, and penetrated the chest cavity and superficially penetrated the left lung. Then we have the 4th stab wound, which is to the left side of the mid-back. This wound went through the skin, the underlying soft tissue, and just penetrated the chest cavity without injuring the left lung. So those are all the stab wounds, and then we have, well, on this one you can't see all of the incised wounds, but you have 4 inside. Yeah, here we go. So here you see 5 incised wounds. So you have 2 incised wounds to the right upper arm, 1 incised wound to the posterior right forearm, 1 incised wound to the left upper arm, and then 1 incised wound to the posterior left pinky.
I'm going to show you the second page here. Dr. Rose, as to Ms. Parcell's head and neck, how many sharp force injuries were identified in those areas?
So Ms. Parcell had a total of 26 sharp force injuries. So she had 7 stab wounds and 19 incised wounds. And I can quickly go through all of those too if you would like. Starting with the incised wounds, so she had, as I said, a total of 19 incised wounds to various locations to her scalp, to the right ear, the areas in front of the ear, the areas behind the ear, both cheeks, and to the right side of the anterior neck. And again, these wounds just went through the skin and superficially penetrated the underlying soft tissue. Now we have 7 stab wounds to the neck area. We have 1 stab wound to the left side of the posterior neck, and that wound just went through the skin and the deep underlying soft tissue. And then we have a total of 6 stab wounds to the right side of the neck. And these wounds went through the skin, the underlying soft tissue and musculature of the neck, and then perforated 2 major blood vessels that supply blood to to and from the head, the right internal carotid artery and the right internal jugular vein.
As to the injuries that affected the carotid and jugular arteries, could those be fatal once serrated?
Yes, those would have caused significant amount of bleeding.
And your findings specific to these areas and the locations of the wounds, are there more wounds on the left or the right side of Ms. Parcell's head and neck?
Majority of the wounds are concentrated to her right side.
And speaking to how the location of these wounds and the number in significant areas, pointing you to the stab wounds on the right side of Ms. Parcell's neck here, what would you say was, and when you're determining the cause and the manner of Ms. Parcell's death, which wounds brought the most attention to you? Which were the most significant in your analysis of making that determination?
The most significant stab wounds were the ones to the right side of the neck. The group of 6, well, 5, and then 1 you can't see, but it's on the kind of, if you move the sheet a little bit down, you will see 1 stab wounds to the right side. So the group of those 6, the 6 stab wounds are the most significant ones.
Dr. Rose, could you explain to the jury what blunt force trauma is?
So blunt force trauma is just injury to the body that's caused from the body impacting an object or the body impacting an object.
Did you observe findings of blunt force trauma as it relates to Ms. Parcell?
Yes, I did.
What were your significant findings there?
So Ms. Parcell had contusions or bruises to the left side of her face, her anterior neck, and one contusion to her left knee. She also had tiny abrasions or scrapes to her right cheek, her neck, and her left upper extremity. She also had 2 small lacerations or tears in the skin to the right side of her forehead and to her left eyebrow. Additionally, she also had hemorrhage within her scalp and hemorrhage within the left temporalis muscle, which is just a muscle that sits just underneath.
It really sounds like overkill. 31 stab wounds all over the upper body, front and back, the neck, as she's going through this as the medical examiner.